You know, I was going to do a video about Nintendo 2025, but there's so many endless controversies surrounding Nintendo, the Nintendo Switch 2, the rise of Nintendo grifting channels, and more. And I have thoughts about every controversy, but I just don't feel like doing an entire video about it, because it would just be a waste of my time. But anyways, let's get on to the video. In 1984, the very first Tetris game was released for the Electronica 60, which I never heard of until doing research for this video. I always thought either the NES or the Game Boy versions of Tetris were the first games, but those versions were released in 1989. In 1991, the first ever Puyo Puyo game was released. I always thought the 1992 version was the first one, which many people will recognize this as Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine and Kirby's Avalanche. But in 1995, Nintendo will release one of the greatest puzzle games to ever come out, which was exclusive in Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Panel de Pon. Panel de Pon was first released on October 27, 1995, for the Super Famicom. It was developed by Intelligent Systems, the developers behind the Fire Emblem series, Paper Mario, WarioWare, and Mario Kart Super Circuit. It was produced by Gunpei Yokoi, which I mentioned him in the Virtual Boy video. As mentioned, he created the Game & Watch, Game Boy, and the Virtual Boy. The game stars a young fairy named Lip, the main character of the game. Lip goes on a journey to free the other fairies from a curse created by the Demon King, Thanatos. The gameplay itself is simple. Each player has their own playing field, which are filled with these block panels that rises from the bottom. The player must match 3 or more of the same color of these panels, either horizontal or vertical, and you are controlling a little cursor that is only horizontal. It's also possible to create chain combos. When making a chain combos, you create a garbage block, which can be sent over to your opponent. But when a panel block is touching the garbage block, they can be cleared away and transform into more panels, giving an opportunity to create chain combos. And finally, the match ends if the panels or garbage blocks touch the top of the playing field. Comparing this with other puzzle games like Tetris or Puyo Puyo, creating chains in this game is very easy and very addicting, and I mostly prefer this type of gameplay of any puzzle games out there. Anyways, as you progress the game and taking down the Demon King himself, you face your final opponent, the goddess Cordelia, who was revealed to be Lip's mother. But this whole story is part of the versus mode in the single player mode. Panel de Pon has other modes, Endless mode, where the players try to get best high scores, and it's also a good place to practice chaining, and you can select the difficulty and speed levels. Time trials, similar to endless mode, but you were given 2 minutes and get a high score before time runs out. Stage clear, much like endless, but you have to clear out the panels above the line in order to progress to the next level. There are a total of 30 levels. As you make progress, a special stage will appear featuring Thanatos, which you have to defeat him with combos. Puzzle. Here you are given a number of panels that needed to be cleared within the limit of the cursor, and it's pretty challenging. And versus, which is already covered, but it's worth mentioning the difficulty. In easy mode, you only do 10 rounds, with the final boss being Dragon. Normal mode's final boss is Thanatos. Hard and super hard mode is Cordelia. Super hard mode is completely hidden, but if you hold L, up, and A while hard mode is highlighted, you'll have access to super hard mode for a tough challenge, which is my preference, and the CPUs ain't messing around, especially the bosses. For me, it's mostly Cordelia. It should also be noted that once you reach Mount Wickedness, you're given the option to select the other fairies other than Lip. You can also do that before entering Mount Wickedness by holding X and Y before the match begins. However, everyone except Lip only has one life, meaning that if you lose the match while using the other fairies, they'll disappear permanently. I immediately fell in love with this game, ever since when it came out to the NSO for the first time. In fact, it is in my top 10 of most played games on the SNES NSO, as I played 30 plus hours into this game. My most played game in the SNES NSO is Mario Super Picross with 50 hours. Don't judge me, I like Picross. And I have never played 2-player mode because I don't have any friends. Which is worth mentioning that in 2-player mode, you can select every character. That includes the bosses. Plus, if you hold L and R on both controllers, you'll unlock Thanatos and Cordelia. And finally, I also adore the soundtracks. I have some favorites such as Thiana's theme, which is the forest stage, Ruby's theme, the Jewel stage, the Panic version of Flare's theme, which is the fire stage. While the game itself is entirely Japanese, this game really brings back childhood memories. While this game specifically is Japanese exclusive, I grew up with a different version, as this game did get a release, but with different characters. In August 1996, Panel de Pon was released to the West for the Super Nintendo, and it got a Game Boy version, but without the original fairy characters from the original game, as they have been replaced by characters from Yoshi's Island, as well as having a different title, Tetris Attack. Interestingly, before Yoshi takes the cast, this game was originally planned to use characters from Rare's Killer Instinct for localization, as Nintendo requested Rare for the usage, but it was rejected. So the idea of using Yoshi characters came into play. The idea of having the original characters to be replaced with Yoshi characters, I think the most common reason why is that if you look at the original game, specifically the roster, you could probably tell that this game feels like it aims for a female audience. So Nintendo decided to change the characters with more recognizable characters, which is pretty understandable, but this was in the 90s. Nowadays, anyone can pick up and play Panel de Pon. Anyways, as for Tetris Attack, despite the name, there's nothing related to Tetris. Hell, during an interview with Alexei Pajinov and Hank Rogers in 2009, Hank Rogers stated that naming the game with no connection with Tetris wasn't a good idea, and also mentioned that the game should have had its own name, which it did with Yoshi no Panel Pon, only releasing in Japan for the Satellaview. As for the game itself, it's the same as Panel de Pon. Same modes, same story, same soundtracks, but with Yoshi characters, but there are notable differences between these two. The title screens are completely different, Lip's stage and music is replaced with Yoshi's stage and music, with the music being an arrangement of an opening demo from Yoshi's Island. Additionally, lip sync can still be heard in the game, in the tutorials. In Panel de Pon, characters are given different garbage blocks of their own, while that's not the case for Tetris Attack, as all the characters uses the same garbage block design. Bowser replaces Thanatos in Stage Clear mode, and Cordelia in Hard and Super Hard difficulty in Versus mode. Stage 4 in Panel de Pon, Ruby's stage, is Jewel themed, but in Tetris Attack, it's a flower themed stage for Flying Wiggler. Before you ask, no, this is not Lip's stage. The boss stages in Versus modes have their own themes in Panel de Pon. Phoenix stage features the statues of itself, what a narcissist. Dragon is a dungeon theme, Thanatos theme is cosmic, and Cordelia theme looks like heaven. While in Tetris Attack, the bosses features Hookbill the Koopa, Naval Piranha, and Kamek. uses the background from the cutscene as well, sharing the same music as Phoenix and Dragon, while Bowser uses an alternate version of Dragon Stage, with the stone in the background resembles Bowser, and Bowser shares the same music as Thanatos on the stage. The game over screen is different. In Panel de Pon, it features Lip feeling down in the blue background, as well as featuring an image of the opponent she lost to, as well as featuring 3 different music box renditions of her own theme, Wendy's theme, and Elia's theme. While in Tetris Attack, it features Yoshi lying on the floor similar to his death animation from Yoshi's Island, and it also features a music box rendition of Yoshi's stage in the background. Versus mode got a new victory theme. In Panel de Pon, the critical music still plays after the match ends, but not the case for Tetris Attack. Listen. Cordelia's critical theme was cut from the game, but her theme can still be heard when encountering Bowser in Versus mode. A password was added in Versus mode, and the options menu was added. As for the Game Boy version, it still uses the Yoshi characters, same theme, every mode from SNES version is here, and you can't see your opponents are doing due to the Game Boy screen being small. The SNES version of Tetris Attack is the one I grew up as a toddler. When I first looked at the cartridge, I wasn't interested at first until I inserted it into the console and wasn't expecting this to be a Yoshi game. But playing Panel de Pon really makes me remember my childhood days with Tetris Attack. And it's kinda shame that the SNES version of Tetris Attack never got re-released on Virtual Console, but the Game Boy version got re-released only in Japan in December 11th, 2013 for the 3DS Virtual Console. Speaking of which, the original Panel de Pon has got re-releases. It got re-released on the Wii's Virtual Console on November 27th, 2007, as well as releasing outside of Japan for the first time with South Korea on September 30th, 2008. Then it got added to the Wii U Virtual Console on May 29th, 2013. Then on the 3DS Virtual Console on August 9th, 2016, exclusively to the new Nintendo 3DS. It is also included as one of the 21 games included in a Japanese exclusive Nintendo Classic Mini Super Famicom, which was released on October 5th, 2017. But then on May 20th, 2020, Panel de Pon will finally be released for the first time ever in America, Europe, and Australia for Nintendo Switch Online. And I was so excited when it was announced because of Tetris Attack memories, as well as playing other games such as Pokémon Puzzle Challenge and Animal Crossing Puzzle League and Animal Crossing New Leaf. Speaking of which, Panel de Pon is a game that started the Puzzle League series. The later games would have different brandings with the localization between the West and Japanese. It's kinda complicated, but hear me out. But the series would use a different cast of characters from other Nintendo IPs, starting with Pokémon, with 2 entries, Pokémon Puzzle League and Pokémon Puzzle Challenge for the Nintendo 64 and Game Boy Color respectively. Pokémon Puzzle League was released in 2000 and is heavily based on the anime, with the inclusion of the characters with voice lines and arranged songs from the anime. When you boot up the game, you get to see something really cool.
Hi, Professor O.
Hello, Ash. I have an important message for you. They are starting an official Puzzle League tournament, and you are selected as one of the challengers.
I'll go sign up.
I'm so proud of you, Ash. Being selected for this event is such an honor. Well, there's no time to explain everything. You must hurry.
Well, let's go.
Wait! Don't forget to come and see me in my office in Puzzle League Village!
Yeah.
Did you hear me, Ash?
Eager to prove themselves in this new type of Pokemon battle, Ash and Pikachu race to Pokemon Puzzle League Village.
There it is, Pikachu. Are you ready for another new challenge? Pikachu!
Yup, an animated cutscene, which is very interesting how it was able to be implemented on a Nintendo 64 game. You play as Ash and battle against gym leaders, Friends of Rivals, Team Rocket, the Elite Four, and the Secret Battle with Mewtwo. Also during Versus mode, you're given an option to choose one of 3 of your Pokemon, but it doesn't really matter what you choose. It's not like you're playing the mainline games. The game also introduced 3D mode, and strangely, this game never got a release in Japan, not even on re-releases like the Virtual Console and Nintendo Switch Online. It's also worth noting that this is the first game to use Puzzle League for initial releases. Interestingly, the game itself was originally going to be a sequel of Panel de Pon as Panel de Pon 64, more on that later. On the same year as Pokemon Puzzle League, Pokemon Puzzle Challenge was released for the Game Boy Color. This game is based on Pokemon Gold and Silver, and out of all of the Panel de Pon games, this one is my favorite in the entire series, which really baffles me that Nintendo has yet to re-release this gem on Nintendo Switch Online, but instead, they gave us Quest for Camelot. But anyways, the challenge mode serves as the game's story like the versus mode in Panel de Pon. Here you battle against the Johto gym leaders and the Elite Four, depending what difficulty you're playing it. Your first Pokemon are the Johto starters to play with, but when achieving different milestones, you'll unlock more Pokemon. Speaking of Pokemon, much like with Puzzle League, it doesn't really matter what Pokemon you pick. There's also the baby Pokemon to unlock, but they're only exclusive to Marathon mode, and they'll hatch over time. But there's something really unique about Pokemon Puzzle Challenge. On the title screen, if you press these button combos, you'll enter a screen. Then press A 24 times, then B 24 times. Once that's done, you'll get to play the unreleased Panel de Pon feature, as this game was originally going to be a Panel de Pon game, which features characters from the original Panel de Pon, with 2 new characters who will later be used for Nintendo Puzzle Collection. I'll get to that one in a bit. But however, it got rebranded for Pokemon, most likely for brand recognition because we all know how popular Pokemon is. This is so cool to see this was hidden within the game. I generally wish this was a full game, as there are a lot of cut content. I'll leave you a link to the page from the Cuddy room floor in the description below, as there are other Panel de Pon content that were unused. Plus, I saw a YouTube video showcasing the original Game Boy Color Panel de Pon restored. And let me remind you, this was inside a Pokemon game. So if you're a fan of Pokemon like myself, I highly recommend checking these games out, and have better Pokemon puzzle experience than Pokemon Cafe Mix and Pokemon Friends. Those games are hot garbage. In 2003, the sequel of Panel de Pon would be released for the Nintendo GameCube exclusively in Japan, with Nintendo Puzzle Collection, which also includes a revamped version of Yoshi's Cookie and Dr. Mario 64. Which, fun fact, that game was never released in Japan for the Nintendo 64. The sequel of Panel de Pon is based on the unreleased Panel de Pon 64, which was discovered in 2020. The unreleased Panel de Pon 64 uses the same engine as Pokemon Puzzle League. And that's how the West got Pokemon Puzzle League. Anyways, Nintendo Puzzle Collection was originally planned to be released internationally, as well as being titled as Masterpiece Puzzle Collection. But unfortunately, it was cancelled. As for the game itself, this version includes additional modes with the support of 4 players and a new cast of characters. Additionally, you can play these games on the Game Boy Advance with the link cable that was bundled with. Despite the game being only Japanese, I could totally see this game be finally released internationally for the Nintendo GameCube Nintendo Switch Online app in the future on Switch 2. Oh, I'm sorry, Nintendo Classics. Besides, we got the original Panel de Pon game since 2020. or much longer if you count the unreleased Panel de Pon and Pokemon Puzzle Challenge. Plus, I wonder what would this game be like if it was released in the West, specifically with the cast of characters. If there's an alternate world, I'm betting the game would be cast with Donkey Kong characters. Or Nintendo would not include the game, and that would suck. It's also worth noting that this is also the final game in the series to feature the fairy characters. Next is Dr. Mario and Puzzle League, released in 2005 for the Game Boy Advance, which includes a remake of Dr. Mario that resembles the N64 game, and Puzzle League, which features 6 different modes. And honestly, there's not that much to talk about this one. There's no story, no characters, it's just 6 different modes. And finally, Planet Puzzle League, released for the Nintendo DS in 2007. The final entry of the Puzzle League series before the series itself goes on hiatus. The game heavily relies on holding the Nintendo DS sideways and using the touchscreen, and the game is supported for Nintendo Wi-Fi connection until May 2014. Everyone remembers that service? Back then, this was the only way to play Puzzle League online, before Nintendo Switch Online. However, much like the Game Boy Advance game, there is no story and characters in this game. Although interestingly, in the Japanese version of the game, Lip's stage can be unlocked in that version. And that's all I have for this one. And that's every entry of the Puzzle League series, as the series will go on a hiatus without a new entry outside of re-releases. But however, in 2016, the series will make a return as a minigame in the version 1.4 of Animal Crossing New Leaf, which will be known as Animal Crossing New Leaf Welcome Amiibo. In the update, it added the new Nintendo 3DS and the Wii U furniture item, which can be obtained from fortune cookies. These items can get you access to minigames. The Wii U lets you play Desert Island Escape, a game that originated from Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, a game that everyone loves. I never played that game. And the new Nintendo 3DS lets you play Animal Crossing Puzzle League. In the game, you face off against opponents such as Tortimir, random villagers from your town, Isabelle, and Cornemir. You have 3 rounds to beat before facing your opponent, and move on to the next opponent. This game also has abilities that can affect the gameplay, as well as different abilities from Amiibo. And not gonna lie, from my experience, I find this minigame feel pretty slow. But it's not terrible. But anyways, when completing certain milestones in this minigame, you'll unlock different items, especially an outfit based on Lip, which is pretty cool.
But I'm not done yet!
While Animal Crossing New Leaf is the last game with Panel de Pon, the series, mostly the original game, did get references in other games. In the Super Smash Bros. Series, the item, Lip's Stick, has been in every Super Smash Bros. Game ever since Melee. When the item is used, it'll create a flower effect on your opponents when they come into contact. Also appeared in every game since Melee, the Garbage Block, which the design is based on Lips, is one of the transformations of Kirby's Down Special. Super Smash Bros. Brawl introduced a remix of Lip's theme. There are also stickers featuring the fairies from Nintendo Puzzle Collection, but in the localization of Brawl, they are mistakenly named as their Super Famicom counterparts. Don't let Brawl lie to you. And there's also a panel sticker. In Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Lip appears as a Mii costume for the Mii Sword Fighter. Lip also appears as a support spirit. And finally, outside of the Super Smash Bros. Series, Lip makes an appearance in the 2008 Wii game, Captain Rainbow, another game that is exclusive to Japan. And that is every entry and reference of the Puzzle League series, aka Panel de Pon. While every game, okay, not every game, uses different characters from Yoshi, Pokémon, and Animal Crossing, there's still Panel de Pon, even without the original Fairies. I could say the same thing with Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine and Kirby's Avalanche, which they're Puyo Puyo games. As mentioned, I prefer this type of gameplay over Tetris and Puyo Puyo. Plus, I would love the series to get revived eventually, and maybe get a battle royale style game like Tetris 99. So what do you guys think about Panel de Pon, and the series as a whole? If you haven't tried these out, I highly recommend giving them a shot. Wait, what the? What's this? Animal Crossing New Horizons? Oh, that's cool. A brand new update.
With an active Nintendo Switch Online membership, you can even play a select classic game on...
Wait, did you see that? Let's rewind a bit. God damn it, Nintendo. Alright, let's do this quick. So I just started doing this video a few weeks ago, and I was about to finish editing the video before releasing it to the public. The brand new update for Animal Crossing New Horizons just recently dropped, where it includes the new hotel, where you can create 2 rooms per day, as well as including new unlockable Nintendo items with toys and consoles, which you can play the latter. And one of them is the Super Famicom item, and it features Panel de Pon, which you can play in this game. However, it does require the Nintendo Switch Online membership. But anyways, that's it for this video. Leave down in the comments and give this video a like. And if you're new to this channel, why not hit that subscribe button for more content in the future? Which I took an interest on doing these types of videos, where I take a look at Nintendo games, as well as take a look at the development, the gameplay, the story, the cut content, as well as the legacy. Ever since the Virtual Boy video I made did a really good job in the first few days after upload. So thank you guys for the support of that video. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and take care. Peace.